Hey everybody, welcome to my kitchen. If you clicked on the video, you already know what we're making. That's right, pasta. And I'm going to show you how to do it with just 4 ingredients with or without a machine. Let's get started. For the ingredients you'll need, for the equipment you'll need a baking pan, a whisk, a rolling pin, a bench scraper or a knife, and if you're using a pasta making attachment, have that handy along with your stand mixer. Step 1. Whisk together the eggs, yolk, olive oil, and salt in a bowl. Step 2. Pour your flour onto the center of a baking sheet with high sides. With your fingers, create a well in the center with thick walls. Then pour the egg mixture into it. Using a fork, bring the edges of the flour into the eggs and continue to mix. As you pour more flour in, the mix becomes less soupy. Over time, it will have enough firmness to no longer leak. If it does, don't worry. This is why we're using a baking pan with sides, to hold it in. Just continue to mix as best you can. Once there is a shaggy dough, begin kneading it for 8 to 10 minutes. You can flatten it into a disc to get rid of the dry bits of flour on the inside. I like to then fold it in half and roll it into a ball, ensuring that the dough is even and the dry flour is gone. By the end of the kneading, you'll have a soft dough that is slightly tacky but doesn't stick. If it is still too sticky, continue to knead, adding a touch more flour when necessary. Step 3. Wrap the dough in plastic wrap and let sit in the fridge for 30 minutes to an hour. So now that your dough has rested, there were really 2 ways to move forward. The first is with a rolling pin, and the second is with a pasta maker that attaches to your stand mixer. And I'm going to show you how to do both. And in both cases, we have to get the dough really thin and use copious amounts of flour. For pasta making, flour is your friend, so make sure you have some on hand. Step 4. Flour a baking pan and set aside for the noodles later. Then, flour a surface and roll out your dough into a fat log. Then, using your bench scraper or a knife, slice into small segments. Leave one segment out that you'll be working with and cover the rest so they don't dry out. If using a rolling pin, keep watching. If using a pasta attachment, skip forward to 4 minutes and 40 seconds. Step 5. Take the segment you are using and flatten into a disc. Flour both sides and then using a rolling pin, pass over it. With each pass, flour both sides of the disc until you have something akin to a rectangle. It's important to make sure you dust with flour so it is dry and paper-like and not at all tacky. Step 6. Lift one end of the dough off the counter. As you bring it back down, let it gently fold like an accordion, like this. Then take a knife or a bench scraper and cut into slices. The width of the cut will determine the width of the noodle. The closer you cut, the narrower the noodle. Step 7. Unfold each noodle and lay flat. When you have several strips, toss with flour and add to a baking pan until the baking pan is full of dry noodles. Let them dry out for 15 to 30 minutes. At this point, you can put the noodles in a Ziploc bag and freeze them for later. They'll last around 9 months. Otherwise, the next step is to finally cook. In a pot of boiling water and some oil, add the noodles and cook for 5 to 8 minutes. When done, strain, add your favorite sauce, and enjoy. And there you have it. Directions for the pasta maker attachment. Step 5. Connect the pasta attachment you would normally use to make lasagna or to flatten a piece of dough, and set it at its widest setting, usually marked as number 1. Picking up one of the segments, pass it through the machine once or twice. Flour both sides, change the setting up one thinner, and pass it through again. Continue to flour with each pass until you get to setting number 5 or 6. If there are no numbers on your attachment, eyeball the thinness of your pasta. It shouldn't fall apart in your fingers, but should feel paper thin and on the drier side. Once you have reached the desired thinness, take the long sheet of dough and cut in half. Flour both sides of each segment and lay on a baking pan. You can stack up the sheets of dough this way until it's ready to be cut into noodles. If you happen to make a mistake and don't use enough flour, or go to a thin setting that the dough is not yet ready for, your dough can rip. It'll look like this. Don't worry, you can just reflour it, fold it in half, go back to a wider setting and start again. Step 6. Attach the noodle cutter. I chose a fettuccine attachment. Pass the flattened sheet of dough through the machine. You can toss with flour and leave in a baking pan, or my favorite, use a pasta rack to hang the noodles to dry. Let all the noodles dry out for about 15 to 30 minutes. At this point, you can freeze them in a Ziploc bag. They'll last around 9 months in the freezer. Otherwise, it's time to cook. In a pot of boiling water and some oil, add the noodles and cook for 5 to 8 minutes. When done, strain, add your favorite sauce, and enjoy. And there you have it.